Well guys, it is mid-January. Last video I just posted was from the end of December and had a little chance to go hunting on my dad's farm. So today is January 16th. A sad day because that would be the day after Missouri bow season. So I did not get another chance to really get out and get a lot of hunting done. So today I'm actually going into a public land spot that's right behind my house. I'm going to do a little searching. I did do a hunt or two in here because I had found a pretty good buck bedding area on one side of a long, narrow public corridor that had been clear cut years ago. Currently it's grown over by briars, cedars, and very few mature trees. I'm pretty sure there's a pretty good amount of deer in here, and so I'm going to get out and do a little scouting today. So stay tuned, and we'll see what happens today. So guys, I'm going to be doing some scouting, and I'm going to try to get you guys some pictures. It's a little bit too cold to be videotaping this whole thing. But I'm going into this public land spot that's pretty thick, pretty overgrown. I'm just walking up into it now. And you can see this and basically all of this kind of scrubby trees are predominantly what make up this area. If you go 50 yards through there, it opens up into open hardwoods with very little underbrush, and I've had a couple of decent bucks killed over there by my neighbor. But this is right behind my house. It's public property. It was actually going to be a highway department project that never materialized, and so it's technically still just public highway department. I'm going to do some walking today and see what I can find, but I'm also going to try to spend some time with you guys talking about my next point of the ethics of hunting, and why and what do we do when we talk about hunting. So I'm actually going to skirt the edge of this. I'm only going to make it about halfway today around this property, because the further back you go, the denser and more difficult it gets. So what I'm going to try to do today is there's some trails that I had kind of identified, and the buck bed that I identified basically mid-season. I think it was around October, November. And I tried to get in here and hunt it during rut, and I never got to see him. I'm pretty sure he busted me one day. I was sitting back in a bunch of cedar trees, and the wind was blowing what I thought was in my favor. But I heard some snorting right around 4:30, 5 o'clock one evening, and I never saw a deer. And it came from the area of the bedding that I had found. So not a successful hunt. And so I'm going to try to do a little scouting in this area just so I can kind of see maybe what to get better set up for next year. So stay tuned. I'll try to get you guys some pictures. So this is down in some cedar trees. Last year I found a shed down here of a decent buck. It wasn't huge, but it was decent. That's ultimately what led me to keep looking through this area and finding this buck bed that's further up. And so I know if you can't see it or not, but right up along there is some mature trees. That's actually a tree line. That's where we're heading to next. I'm walking through an area along a fence line looking for some crossings. I've not seen anything yet. And so I'm heading over there because that's where I found all the buck bedding last year. I'm going to see if he's still using it, and I'm going to kind of see what it looks like, because really there's not a lot of big trees in here, so I'm probably going to have to set up either a blind or find a small tree that I can get into with my saddle and catch them crossing. But so right down there is that fence line. It runs up to the left, and then it cuts across right up there on the other side of that big cedar tree. And then we'll head over by that large tree line and we'll see what we find there. So now that we're here at the tree line, I want to show you something. So I just came through that right there, and it's pretty thick. There's a lot of that briar, twisted vine. But as we come up this hill, all those little hickory trees right there and I'll try to take some pictures while I'm in there, is where I found all that bedding last year. There's about 2 beds in there. There's rubs all over the place, and it kind of opens up that way and heads across where you can see that big maple tree right there. Problem is that maple tree is about 60 yards across. It's really hard to get a stand up in there, and it's surrounded by cedar trees and all kinds of junk. That's where I tried to set up and hunt them. So I was about 50, 60, maybe 70 yards from his bedding, and I thought I had wind blowing this way, and he snorted and took off. I never saw him. So I was hunting from the ground. There's some persimmon trees over there that I'm going to go check out. But this is where I was at, so I'm trying to figure out a way to maybe put a camera in here and track him, maybe early season next year, find out what's going on. To my knowledge, there's not a lot of people that hunt back in here. So maybe if I can cut some trails or open up some brush and make some travel corridors through here, I might be able to get set up on him somewhere. So I'm going to keep walking and see what I can find. So right in here is a spot that I want to try to investigate a little bit. So right out here, earlier this year, it's thick, it's brushy, and I don't want to necessarily take a lot of it down. But there was a couple of persimmon trees right in here. I think one of them is on that far side, right there, I think. And maybe another one over there. And those things were loaded. When I came up here that day, they were just bright orange with all of the persimmons that were on them. And I have a deer trail that I just showed you, just took a video of. I'm going to post it here, moving into this area from the bedding areas that I saw. Now most of them right now look like does. So I'm going to keep looking through here and keep walking. I know what's over on this side, over here. That's the open timber over there. Now it's a little bit of a trek to get through there. It's pretty thick. But somewhere right in here is where I want to try to figure out how to put a stand. There's some game trails that run down that way. There's cedar trees right here, but they're not very big trees. They're all very young and immature trees. So basically what I'm going to have to do is probably put a saddle stand set up somewhere up in these trees where I can get about 10 foot off the ground. The only other option is that little box elder or whatever that is over there, and that's going to be hard to shoot out of. I could get up in there and I could probably hunt that, but that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to start walking down this fence row a little bit further. I've not done that before. I'm going to see if I can find some other good spots, and then keep walking, enjoying this nice 10-degree day. All right, guys, I just walked through there. I've come all the way, pretty much 3/4 of the way back of this 50-acre property. Came across, and let me show you my neighbor's property. So this here is my neighbor's property. And as you can see, it's mostly open hardwoods. You can turn this way and you can see where they've clear cut and just let it overgrow. I just walked through, saw a few trails along the edge, but not a lot of trails through the middle. So that just confirms that where I was seeing those buck beds up on top is the easiest route of travel. The second easy route of travel is this fence line right here and the fence line on the other side. So guys, just came walking up from down there. I mean, it's super thick down there. I came across, I showed you the contrast between my neighbor and the highway department. Came up here, right back up in there, about 50 yards from me, I just jumped a deer. It looked like a small buck. I don't think it was a large one, but from the looks of it up there, let me zoom in for you. It looks like we've got a couple of rubs right there on that tree right in the middle. It's a small tree, but it is still a rub. And then literally right here next to this big oak tree is the opening in the fence that goes across. So not very far up this way and straight across was the buck bedding that I was talking about earlier in my video. Well guys, this is about as good a spot as any as I'm going to be able to take my video. So real quick, I want to hit my next point for the ethics of hunting before it gets too dark tonight, or before I get too cold and have to go in. But what I'm looking at today, if you just watched my last video, which I'll try to post in this one as well, the first thing I talked about was, why do you go hunting? What's your purpose? What's your goal? If you don't have one of those, I'm not saying you can't go hunting, but I think it defines a lot of who you are as a hunter, what you're going to do when hunting, what type of hunting you're going to do, what species of animals you're going to go after. Like, I think there's a lot to consider with that question. I didn't have a chance to go into all of that, but I think I gave you a basics of why I hunt and what my purpose for hunting is. The next thing I think that is very important just goes along with what I started listing off for you, and that is, what are you going to hunt? Why? That's a very important question. But the next question is what? For me, I think it's important to have that conversation individually, but also have that conversation with your kids, or maybe with the people that you're teaching how to hunt, or maybe you're just starting to learn to hunt yourself. But what are you going to hunt? One of the things that I've told my son is, we're not going to hunt something unless we're planning on eating it. Now, do we eat every little thing that we ever go hunting for? No, not always. Sometimes the meat's damaged. Sometimes it's a species that maybe we don't get enough of, and so, you know, we get a bite of a quail or a bite of a squirrel, and we don't have enough. But ultimately, if we're going to hunt something, unless it's a danger to animals, it's a destruction of property type of a situation, I tend to not try to shoot things that we're not going to eat. Because when we talk about why we go hunting, I talk to you about enjoying creation and taking care of what God gave us and enjoying what God gave us. And I think those are all very important things, and that goes into this question of, what am I going to hunt? I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but from my personal perspective and what I'm trying to teach my son is, it's important. It is probably a big factor in some of the early days of hunting that I had with him, was trying to explain to him that we don't just shoot things to kill things. Like I said in my last video, we shoot things because we're either going to eat them, or they are causing damage to something like a farm or our property. You know, rats and things like that. I don't eat them, but if they're going to be digging in my house, I'm probably going to take care of them. So I'm sitting out here today. I am scouting for white-tailed deer. And if I had the opportunity to hunt elk or moose or other things in the future, I plan to do so. Why? Because I eat that meat. It's a staple in our diet. We use it throughout the year. It's something that we can utilize. My son and I also like to go squirrel hunting on occasion, and yes, it's something that we eat as well. And we love to go fishing. If we're going fishing and I don't plan to keep it, we catch and release almost exclusively, unless it's something like a trout fishing excursion and we want to keep it for smoked trout or for a meal. Again, I think it's important for you to answer the question, what are you going to hunt? Now, there might be some people out there that go hunting and shoot white-tailed deer and don't really like it and can't eat it, but they find ways to donate it. They find ways to give it to people that need it or that will eat it. And I think that's a very noble thing to do as well. So today's video is simply this. I think it's very important for us as hunters to consider, why do we hunt, but also to consider, what are we going to hunt? Here in just a little while, hopefully with the weather being cold, it might hamper us a little bit, but hopefully my son and I will start to be able to figure out some coyote hunting. And some people are going to say, well, are you going to eat the coyote? Although I don't have any plans to eat them regularly, I think it's an animal that you could possibly eat if you needed to. But the main reason that I'm doing it is, here in southern Missouri, there's a lot of coyotes. Not only do they cause damage to the whitetail herds, they're also pretty unpopular with the local farmers. In fact, most farmers that I talk to, if I even mention maybe coming and doing some coyote hunting, they jump all over it. So that's another option that I think, as we talk about what kind of hunting we're doing, there's a lot of options out there for you to look at, think through, and enjoy. and be able to take part in what we call this great sport of hunting. So as you go through this reflection yourself, as you start thinking about what you want to do in your hunting, I hope that you guys will stay tuned to my channel and put some comments down below on what you want to hear about next. I'm going to continue working on my videos. I'm getting some scouting in, hopefully. Now that deer season's over, I'm going to be getting into the woods and scouting some public properties that I did not have a chance to get onto this year, and do some boots on the ground scouting for next year. So as I go ahead and do that, I'm going to keep you guys posted on my next ethical point, and hopefully start finding some places for deer and setups for next year. Stay tuned, guys. Hit like down below and subscribe, and don't miss anything on the content. Have a good one.